Attacks around Avdiivka show visible progress for the Russians, while the Ukrainians keep up the pressure over the Dnipro on its left bank. We'll talk about this and about Russia's attempts to offset its population decline with the introduction of Ukrainians into its people and with the focus on recruiting migrants in this situation report. We'll start off in the north here on the Luhansk front. Russians attacked at various points. I'm not going to recount all the names so you can hear me pronounce them wrongly, but they have not been successful. We have Wargonzo though, and he confirms a Ukrainian success near Raihorodka, where they pushed the Russians out. He claims it's now gray zone, which would mean that it's now contested, but it means that the Ukrainians have had local success here. South of the Seversky Donetsk, the Russians had visible success here at Chromove. They advanced along the hill area here, and according to a Ukrainian mill blogger, they advanced a full 850 meters in the last 30 hours roughly. Also, we have visual evidence of the Ukrainians having crossed the railroad tracks here at Avdiivka. They were actually spotted here, where we have a geolocalization here fully inside of that tree belt further to the east, where they have been shelled though, so we don't know whether they still control it, but we see that they've pushed the Russians away from this part at least. Further south at Avdiivka, the Russians are continuing to attack. They have advanced to the railroad track here, close to Stepove. So far, they haven't been able to cross it, but it's now considered to be fully under their control. Last episode, they've been northeast of the waste heap. Now they have shown a video where the Russian flag flies on the highest point of the waste heap. The Ukrainians later brought that flag down with an FPV drone, where you might ask whether it's worth wasting that on a symbolic target like that, or whether they shouldn't rather strike personnel with it. But in this case, they did it, and we now consider the waste heap completely under Russian control. They also had some success in the south. They advanced further towards Pervomaiske in the north of these small lakes here, and Ukrainian counterattacks in the south, both from Pervomaiske as well in the direction of Vodiane, have been unsuccessful. So we see them here. The Russians they're offensive. The big amount of personnel they are pushing in is showing visible success. Further south, attacks by the Russians at Marinka, at Pobieda, and at Novomikhailivka fail. No change in territory here. And on the Oblast border, we have continued Russian attacks close to Priutne. Here we have another geolocalization where they have been localized quite close to that lake here in that specific shape. And this lake is actually here. So the Russians have advanced a little further away from Priutne. Now we have visual confirmation in this case as well. Close to Orekhiv, we have a fresh Leopard 2 loss being confirmed. That shows us that the Ukrainians used it to attack though. West of Robotine, here in this area, one of their Leopard 2s was geolocalized in this position, and it's being attacked by an FPV drone. Let me just quickly move forward. It's like zooming in, and you see the Leopard 2 shoot, and there it strikes it on the turret right after it shot. What we do not see is the barrel moving up, so it might not yet be reloading. It hit it more or less exactly where the ammunition is stored, but it has blowout panels, and that's what we see at a later point where we see it shoot, and here it's being hit. And you can see the tank first shoot. Roughly a second later, it's being hit. And roughly a second later, the fire starts. And you actually can even see the blowout panel fly up here. This here. This is the blowout panel flying up. Now the video continues and you see one of the, I could identify one personnel leaving the tank. I'm not completely sure if more have left. As of now, this is obviously a taken out Leopard 2A6, but in theory at least, it could be repaired if the damage hasn't spread into the main turret. There are videos from the blowout panels on the Abrams being tested, and it looks from the inside like nothing is even happening. If the door was closed, the armored door, the crew inside should be safe. And actually the damage should be somewhat limited. I mean, it'll take serious effort inside of a repair yard to repair the back, but it would be able to use it. The video stops after that too. So we don't know what happened to that tank. We see it burning here, but we don't see additional fire. This, for instance, is in my mind is a cut. So I'm not completely sure if this is a continued fire, so if the rest of the tank caught fire or not. So what I'm saying is there is a slight possibility that this tank could be repaired. Obviously, if the crew left it and left the hatches open, the Russians will probably drop munitions in to prevent that. First, they have to recover it too. While that chance is really, really slow, it's higher than zero, and it seems that at least part of the crew has survived by the blowout panels doing their job. We have a second one being hit, also being shown here. And this is, I think, a Leopard 2A4, but here, for instance, we see the fire. At least I think the fire comes out of the hatches. So this one is definitely destroyed. There is no way this one can be repaired. Russian accounts claim that 3 are destroyed. I haven't seen the third video, but that might be my mistake. So we do know that several Leopard 2s have been in usage again, and several of them have been hit. We also have additional Ukrainian attacks being reported in the direction of Kopani and in the direction of Novoprokopivka. I cannot confirm that they had success, even though they advanced somewhat in this direction with the Leopard 2. We've seen how that, in that case, at least ended. The Russians themselves are attacking from the east, both in the direction of Malatokmachka, probably along the railroad line here, and from Novofedorivka and Verbove. I cannot confirm that they had any success here. On the Dnipro, the fighting is continuing. The Ukrainian armed forces are likely still in Krinky. The Riba is claiming that they pushed them away. We have that here. Let me quickly turn off my camera so you can see it. So according to Riba, they pushed them completely back, but at the same time, War Gonzo is saying that the fighting is continuing inside of the town. Ukrainian armed forces are also still at both of the bridges here in this area and in this area. The Russian side is reporting that the Ukrainians continuously bring additional forces in. There has also been a landing close to Pitstepne. Russians say it's a sabotage and reconnaissance group, so I guess between 4 to 10 men, not a serious landing. Supposedly, though, there are breakthrough attempts by the Ukrainians in the direction of Poima and Pishchanivka. So the Ukrainian soldiers positioned here are trying to keep pushing in this direction. We see that the Ukrainian side seems to still push in that direction, has not given up their attempts, even though Russian reinforcements have arrived at that point. On the Crimean Peninsula, the Russians are reporting that they defeated a naval drone attack in the night from the 23rd to the 24th. No additional information apart from their claim that they defeated that attack. Generally speaking, additionally to the Second Army, which is moved in, some of it already is in the position around Avdiivka, but parts of it are being redeployed. Ukrainian side is now saying that the 41st Army is also being sent to Avdiivka from the Russian side. If that's true, then the offensive activity in Luhansk should be reduced in the near future, as the 41st Army has been active up here in the last weeks. And we see that the Russians seem to be determined to take Avdiivka now, and as we can see, while they suffer heavy losses, they do have some progress to show for, probably bigger progress than they have achieved in quite some time before. There's also information from Finland. Uh, they are saying the gas pipeline that was damaged or destroyed between Estonia and Finland was destroyed by a Chinese freighter who stopped right in front of the pipeline, dropped one of its anchors, which led the automatic identification system to broadcast that it's mooring, and then it resumed its speed and apparently destroyed the pipeline with its anchor. I've seen that the anchor supposedly was found in place and the ship is missing an anchor as of right now. Now, the reason behind that and the consequences of this, I obviously can't really say yet, but that's the current situation. And finally, the German tabloid Bild is saying that the Russians were thinking about using a space rocket with a Soyuz capsule to let it crash onto Kiev, to basically use it like an intercontinental missile from the size, regarding the size, with a conventional warhead onto Kiev. I have no clue how far the progress was. There's an audio file that was cut. I do not know how far progressed that attempt to attack was, and the Bild has a somewhat dubious reputation inside of Germany, even though I've seen that the full recording is now being published, but it's published in Russian, where I obviously have my issues understanding. Let's go to the troop generation. We have information from Rosstat, that's the Statistics Bureau in Russia. They expect a massive decline in the Russian population by 8 million until 2046, so in the next 23 years. Up to 600,000 are going to be shrinking. The population is going to shrink by up to 600,000 a year. This is already causing panic in Russian nationalist circles, as they see that the ethnic Russians are getting fewer and fewer, while the minorities are keep growing, and thus obviously the demographics overall is changing. This has to be seen in the context of this war as well, where the Russians are accused of abducting Ukrainian children and then spreading them around in Russia, either in foster families or adopting them, or even with their parents, but so isolated that the Ukrainian parents have no choice but to interact only with Russians around them, obviously with the attempt, or at least with the accused attempt, that they should be assimilated into Russia, this way to make up for that loss in population. The Russians are also trying to address that by focusing their recruitment on minorities. We've talked about this in the past few months several times, that the focus of the Russians put a big focus on migrants to recruit them for their armed forces. There is an example here from a Mahmoud. He was like a finalist in a Russian singing show on TV. He was a finalist, and he said there was a raid in his mosque, and he was abducted, or he was taken away by Russian policemen with the other people inside of the mosque, and they are being forced to sign up contracts with the army. Later, he's writing though that supposedly it's now something conscript. So I'm not completely 100% sure how much of this has now come to fruition, but it at least fits to the previous accusations that are being mentioned towards the Russian armed forces. That way, obviously, they can keep up their numbers while reducing the burden both on ethnic Russians itself as well as on the Russian public. Both has to be seen in regards to public confidence in Putin, to dissent towards Putin, and in the demographic change as well, as every migrant that is killed is obviously not causing a problem towards the Russian ethnic majority, and at the same time it doesn't cause problems for Putin itself in his power bases in Moscow and St. Petersburg. There's also the Cheka OJPU channel that is well connected inside of Russian security circles, was also saying that the Russians plan to focus on freshly naturalized citizens, to focus the recruitment again on those without a real lobby at home and on those that won't cause problems. And they are also mentioning now that the prosecution, the state prosecutors in Russia are opening cases that have been closed long ago, that have been cancelled, to put legal pressure on the migrants to basically force them to go to the armed forces as well. And if something, even if the slightest problem is being caused, they are being arrested. Their whole circle around, their friends, their family are all also being investigated, and they're either being forced to sign up or threatened with deportation, basically creating a threat through their whole peer group to either sign up or have their family being deported as well. That's at least what Cheka OGPU is writing here. Also, Redut, the PMC that is affiliated with the Ministry of Defense, is said to now recruit women for combat duty as well. Usually women are only used in rear areas like cooking or communications and in medical professions. Redut wants to hire them for sniper duty and to command, to steer drones as well. And the Estonian military intelligence is saying Russia still has 4 million grenades left, artillery grenades. Russia has received 1,000 containers from North Korea. Those had 300 to 500 grenades in it. So that would mean another 300 to 500,000 extra grenades. And to put it in overall perspective, their current usage with 10 to 15,000 shells a day is 3.6 to 5.5 million grenades. Now, Russia still has 4 left, so roughly for a year, but they are producing fresh ones. The recent estimate, I think, from the Ukrainians themselves was 2 million, that they're currently producing 2 million shells. And they have received roughly 500,000 from the North Koreans, but the shipments are continuing. So we can more or less assume that Russia will be able to keep its current inventory and its current volume, not inventory, its current volume of artillery fire for roughly the next 2 years, if not longer, just to put it in perspective. Because if currently they have for 1 year, but they have the production capacity of half of what they need. So obviously this year and next year will mean another additional year in fresh production, meaning they should have shells until the end of 2025 at the very least, even without the North Korean production aid and deliveries from North Korea. This shows how the Russians are not going to run out of shells in total anytime soon. We've heard in the past that they do show signs of being more frugal. The volume has gone down. They prioritize certain regions. They have logistical problems because obviously shells in a depot in the Urals is not really useful to artillery units along the Dnipro. But while they might have local shell shortages, they were also reported from the south. They are not overall, they don't have empty depots. It's more a distribution problem and the issue of them cutting down usage, overall usage, to make sure they still have enough in the near future. And about international support, we also have some information. The first there is now a video of the first Hawk battery in usage. So the Ukrainians now have not just received Hawk air defense systems, they now are using it in active operations. And the joint venture between the German defense giant Rheinmetall and Ukraine defense industry, former Ukroboronprom, has started its operation. They will begin with maintenance of weaponry and later want to switch to production of selected Rheinmetall products. And finally, we have a video here that shows the threat that is now being posed by drones. As we can see, a very detailed, in a massively modified Russian, I think it should be a T-72B3 if I'm not completely wrong, where you even see the cages like a separate cage over the, no, it's a T-90, I think. Yeah, it's probably a T-90. Where you even see the cages here around the back, around the storage areas, all of this, you see a massively modified, massive modifications against the FPV drone attacks that are now becoming a serious problem. That's it from me for now for this situation report. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. And leave a comment what you think about the current state of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. We don't see much success anymore, while the Russians are attacking at most other places and are having successes. So do you think they can turn it around, or they can keep it up with their focus on the Dnipro? Leave a comment, and it can be really interesting to discuss this. And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting this channel, and that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.